and welcome back to my channel. My name is Johanna, and for those of you who are new here, welcome. And for those of you who are returning, welcome back. Here on my channel, I do planner and planner related videos, DIY tutorials, budget videos, and the occasional new release video of items that I've listed to my Etsy shop. And if that is of interest to you, please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you hit that little notification bell, you'll always be notified of when I do load a new video. And if you could also comment, like, and share, that does help my channel grow and would be greatly appreciated. So it is Tuesday night after work. If you've been here a minute, you know that's always a bad idea for me, but I really wanted to get this video out this week, and I don't know if I ran out of time this weekend, but I just didn't get it done this weekend. So what we're going to be doing today is this cute little journal. I'm thinking of it as a alternative to a, what is it called? A December daily, although depending on how you decorate it, it could be a cute little journal, it could be a November daily, October daily, it could be something for Easter. But the way that I have this set up, it's used with very simple materials, and there isn't a lot of special tools needed to make this version. Now you can zhuzh it up with other materials, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but basically it's just a little handheld journal, and it does close with Velcro, and this is actually just the cover, and we'll be making in this video both this cover, which is very simple to do, as well as these little inserts here. And I do have two different methods on how to do this depending on the thickness. So what I mean by that is, let me take this out, and just to show you that it's just very simple material, this is some heavier weight cardstock, some Christmas paper that's rather thin. I've got some washi tape, and for this I've used some rubber bands because you may not have a whole stash of elastic in your stash. If you do, use that. This is way better. But if you don't, I mean, it works just as well with that. But let me take this booklet out. But all of these books here are exactly the same thing. It's just these two here. Sorry, I have to feel them since they all look the same. All right, so if I put this up, they all have about the same thickness. However, these two in the front here were made with cardstock. So if I flip this open, there's only actual 4 pages until I hit that center point. With just regular copier paper weight, it actually is a lot more pages, and I have these numbered until I hit the center point. So we are at 7 pages. So for the same approximate thickness, depending on the paper weight that you use, whether it's cardstock or whether it's just regular copier paper, will give you the thickness correspondingly. Now this one here is made in the exact same style, but instead of doing a booklet and then matting some paper, this one is just paper, so there is no mat. So every single layout when you open is exactly the same because this is just one sheet of paper glued together, versus this one, which is one sheet of white paper, and then you get to choose the different matte paper that you want on top. Now the reason I'm telling you this is if you're making one of these and you want this to be a December daily, which was started back in 2007 by Ali Edwards, and basically it's just a way starting in December through the 25th of December that you basically capture memory or tell a story for the entire month or leading up to Christmas. And what I think most people do is they date their different pages, and then they put either photos or some journaling or all of the above. And then this would sort of be just an annual scrapbook memory keeper for that. And you could have one for yourself, you could have one for your family. It could be more devotional, it could just be more secular. I mean, it really would depend on you. But the reason why the weight of the paper makes a difference is if you have something that's already chunky like this, and then you're adding pictures on a daily basis, or you're adding a piece of paper so that you can do some journaling, this is going to get thicker. So just depending on what you plan to do, you may want to go with something like this, but put less paper. This one with the heavier cardstock is very sturdy, but there's already less sheets, and if you add pictures to it, then it's going to be even that much bulkier. Or a good alternative is where you just use the sheets of paper themselves, so long as you have at least one decorated side, and then you could put your pictures and your journaling on here, and it will get thicker, but you know, it's already starting off pretty thin. So I see pros and cons for both. The one with the cardstock, I think, is this one, is very sturdy, but it is already pretty hefty. This one, the way that it's designed, it actually has enough so that this one booklet contains enough for a whole December daily. This one does not, so you'd have to have multiple of these in your little, sorry. It's always a problem for me when I craft after work. Anyway, so this here can hold 2 of these. So these are the 2 cardstock ones, and it closes rather well. It could hold one that is double this because you've put pictures. Again, this one doesn't have as many pages. So if you're using 1 page per day, you're not going to have enough to get you through the end of the month. You would definitely need 2 of these. This one, you'd only need 1. This one, you would need multiple, because this could be either 1 day or 2 days, depending on how you decide to do it. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So if you made 2 of these booklets, you could probably get to December 25th. Again, it all just depends on what you decide to do with it. Now, I think this could also be packaged up really cute and sold in a craft fair, so that is an option for you. Again, the paper that I'm using is specifically because I'm thinking of this as a December daily, but depending on the paper that you choose, the sky's the limit. All right, so let's actually get into the tutorial. If you're still here, I will put a timestamp in the actual comment or the description box to let you know when the tutorial begins. I should have started with that. So we're going to make these booklets first, and again, like I said, they are actually all made the exact same way. So now this is based on me being in the US and having access to 8.5 by 11 paper, which is just our standard copier paper size. If you live internationally, then these dimensions may not work if that's not what you're starting off with. So what we'll start off with first is how to make this booklet here. So these are the dimensions, and basically, if I have this, it's basically just a copy paper cut in half so that you've got 5.5 going tall and then 8.5 going wide, so that for every piece of copier paper that you have, or copier paper size that you have, you can get 2 sheets. Now I'm going to use my paper trimmer But again, that isn't necessary because you can just decide if you don't have one of these and you're not gonna, mass produce a bunch of these, then I wouldn't recommend going out and buying one, although I'll have one linked in the description box below. What you can do is just fold the paper in half and then cut up that way. Because if you're doing this for your church or for your women's group, or if you're doing this with a bunch of children, you're not going to be able to get a whole bunch of these. So that definitely would be a workaround, but just, it is 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night. I work tomorrow. I want this to be as quick as I can make it. So I just cut in half, and we've already got multiple sheets. And then the rest of the construction is actually rather easy because you're just going to fold in half. And if you have a scoreboard, you could score all this. Again, I'm trying to think of if you don't have all the tools, what you can use. And you can just use a pen and you want a flat surface to kind of just make that crease pretty solid. Now this is the regular copyweight paper. This is the cardstock paper. Either way, it's done exactly the same. And again, you could score it, or you could just fold it in half and then use whatever tool you have handy to just get a really good crease. For the copier paper one, I believe there are 7 pages, 8 pages. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so there's 7 pages in here. Folded in half gives us enough for a whole December daily. If you do the cardstock, this is only 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, depending on if you're doing this in a group setting or if you're doing multiple of these, just be aware you're going to have to times it by whatever the material is you have and by however many pages you want, because you may want to have multiple thinner ones so that you can take into account that you might be adding pictures or journaling cards. The other way, because again I told you all of these are made the same, is if you have the 12 by 12. Now if you have decorated paper in the 8.5 by 11, then it just makes it that much easier. But I don't, so let me just get a page here. And we want to start off with 8.5 by 11. Now if you have directional paper, you will definitely want to take that into account. This will work either way, so it doesn't really matter. So that's our 11, and that's our 8.5. We won't be using the scraps for this project, but do hold on to them. Or we might be using them for some of the decoration, but that'll come later in the video. And then we would just cut this in half so that we have 2 that are 8.5 by 11. Now for this one, we've got the white sheet that is 8.5 by 11. And if you're going to do some matting like this, then you're going to want to have sheets that are 4 inches by 5 1/4, and then that will fit very nicely on your book, and it'll actually fit on every single page because that's exactly what I did here. So again, if you have a 12 by 12 piece of paper, then you can get 4 of these out of every single piece of paper with some cut off pieces of paper. Guys, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get through this video. Don't craft after work, seriously. All right, let's see if I can get this together. So these I'm going to fold in. Now, if you are doing this, a lighter weight of paper is probably better. And Again, it's because if you're adding things too, it just bulks up your book. But I'd also recommend just a single side because we will be gluing these together. And that's how we're giving this some stability. So we'll work on this one here first. So I'm just going to put 4 together, 2 of the cardstock and 2 of the copy paper. And you could certainly do that, although it might give it a weird thickness because some pages are thinner, some pages are thicker, but you're still matting everything. Now for the one that you're going to mat, you're going to want to fold them individually so you can get a nice crease. And then you're going to want to put them all together. And again, when I made mine, I did either all copy paper or all cardstock paper. I didn't mix it, but for just the tutorial purposes, I mean, it doesn't matter because I just really want you guys to see how to put it together. So put 4 sheets together, 5 sheets together. Again, you are the designer, so you get to choose that. And then I would recommend clipping this together just so that it doesn't move because you want it to be stable. Now I have one of those very long line staplers and I'll insert a picture here. I'm assuming most people don't. So what you can use is just a regular stapler, and then I use an eraser, and you're like, what? Okay, so this does not reach the center. You can see there, it doesn't get to my center point, but I want a staple in the center. I don't want a staple right there. So you'd need a stapler that can open up like that. Now it is a little fiddly, and let me see if I can mark this so that you can see, because it's white. So I would put this on the eraser because that's where this is going to go into. And then I would line up the staple to the middle. Now I wouldn't mark it if I were doing this for real, but again, for you guys to see. And this might take a couple attempts, but you want to staple it to the eraser. So if you can see, it's gone through the eraser. If I pull that out, then the tines are standing up. And then you just use a tool to bring that down. Now, you may not want to use a pen, but it worked well enough. You might want to use your stapler because it's heavier. And then you would just repeat the process on the other side. And I like stapling from the middle outwards versus outwards in. I don't know why, I do. Now in another tutorial that I plan to do, hopefully on a weekend where I'm not so frazzled, I will show you how to do the pamphlet stitch. But for this tutorial, this is how I did the other ones. I don't measure it in, I just kind of eyeball it, go down. If you wanted to, you could put one in the center, and that might be a good idea if you're doing one of these thick ones, because again, the only thing holding this together are just those 2 staplers. But for this demonstration purposes, we're just going to do the 2. And again, just put that down. You can take these off and then just fold this back. Now, depending on how thick your paper is or how many sheets you're using, you're going to see that it doesn't perfectly line up, that there is some overhang, because the more papers you put in, the little farther that it gets from center, the more overhang that you you have. Now I didn't do anything with that, so if you can see, there's actually a little bit of overhang with the white. You could cut that down, but I wasn't sure how that would affect these papers in here, so I just left it. And I mean, this is going to get a lot of love and a lot of use anyway, so I didn't think that was such a big deal. So you've got essentially your first book done. Very simple, hopefully. And then what I'd recommend is, like I said, cut some papers 4" by 5 1/4, so 5.25 by 4. Now, because I have that paper pad, I actually selected 7 or 8 sheets, cut them down, and then I laid them out like cards. And I kept them in their own little pile. So depending on how many different sheets you're using, you may want to do the same. Because what I did was, okay, I had 5 or 6 in a pile, and then I would select one from each, and then I would make another pile. And that way I know I would never get doubles if I were doing sheets like this. Because you can just, you know, have them all out in front of you or on the side of you or wherever you're crafting, and then hope you don't pick the same ones that are either. So these two, if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for something more random or staggered, then I would recommend that way. If you're just going to grab whatever you have, because you see I've got that one here, and then again here, I don't know that I like it so close together. I want it to be a little bit farther apart. And so if you do the method where you play the cards, make little bundles, and then stack the bundles behind each other, then you know it'll be at least 7 or 8 rounds before you get to the next one, depending on how many pieces of paper you cut. You could decide that your backing paper is red or green or brown if it's Thanksgiving, or black if it's Halloween, or green, or a pale green for Easter, and then just do a solid matte page. Again, it just really depends on what you're using it for, but if you're making something similar to this, that's what I did. And then for this, because you can still decorate on top of your cover, all I did was I just used my Tombow glue, and I made sure that I got in the edges and along the sides. You could use score tape for this, but I'm going to tell you right now that's going to be a ton of score tape, so that could get rather expensive. And whether you're making a bunch of these for friends or family, whether you're making these for a craft fair, you definitely want to take into consideration your costs. Now, I like the glue, one, because it's a good solid glue. I really like this one. But also you have a little bit of time to play around with it. And I cut it so that there is a little bit of border of the background. And because the copier paper is rather thin, when you start gluing pages on it, it does make it not as sturdy as the cardstock, but it definitely makes it sturdier. And then you would just go through your entire book and you would just decorate like that. And then you can do like I did in this one. This, I just used my numbers from the Dates and Holidays book just so that I could number the pages so that I could show you what I've done in the past when I sold something similar to this in my Etsy shop. I actually cut down some old outdated calendars, because every month you have 31 days, and so if you cut just the number, it was tedious, and I don't know that I would do that again, but you'd have something that you could glue on to all of your different pages. So that could be something you could do, like a little sticker. You could write, again, the design options are up to you, but it does give you just a really good place to say, hey, for December 12th, this is what I did for 2019. So you would just go ahead and finish up your booklet, and again, you can cover the front. You can put some ephemera, you can put a die cut, you can put a picture of your family or your church members. I mean, again, design is up to you, but the cover you can really go crazy. And then you want to just leave all of the insides blank. Now, if you are starting off with this paper, then it is slightly different because we will not be stapling anything. You would actually glue the white sides to each other. Now, it will give you a little bit more stability because you're doing this, but it is not as stable as if you were using copy paper and then matting it. But this also gives you the thinnest booklet possible, so that if you are going to do some matting or adding some journaling cards or some pictures, then you're not starting off with an already thick book. And then you just want to line it up as best as you can. And then for this one, no, I don't think I wrote this one down. So if you want to cover this page right here, then we're going to need 4.25 going that way, because that's half of 8.5. No, I think I got that backwards. Oh no, I didn't. And then 5.5 going up and down. So let me cut a piece of paper and see if that math works. Now these are some of the offcuts, so I'm just going to use that. But again, whether you use your offcuts or whether you're cutting your sheet, again, it depends on what you're having and what you're using. So is this 5.5? Yay, so that's 5.5, and then we need 4.25. And that actually, yeah, that gives us 2 sheets. So I must have cut those for that other book. And then again, you would glue. I'm going to turn it over because I kind of want to keep those measurements. But you would glue your mat to the front. So for this style of book, you're only going to need to have those mat cuts, the one that's 5.5 by 4.25 for the front and back, just to cover the white space. And again, line that up as best as you can, just to cover the white space. Again, it is a handmade item, so you are not going to get perfection. And then push it down, and then the more pages you glue together, the bigger your journal will be. Now, on some of these, I decided to only glue down the side and down the bottom, and then that would give you a pocket, if you so choose to want a pocket. Again, that's up to you. For this one, I just chose to glue it down, and then it's just solid. So it's a little bit sturdier than just having regular copier paper weight, but it isn't as sturdy as some of these that have the matte front and back. Again, the reason I keep hounding you about that is the booklet looks super cute as is, but when you start adding things to it, it can get really chunky and it might break because the only thing keeping it together is just this 2 staples and maybe some glue here on the spine. Because the way that I finish these is I cut a piece of paper that was the same height as the book, which is 5.5, and then I cut like 1.5 inches. I didn't really measure it, I just wanted it to go around the front and the back. So if we do 1.5 inches, and what you would do is I would kind of round it. You don't want to crease it, you don't want a hard crease, but you do want to kind of mold it. And then on one side I would glue, and it doesn't need to be perfect, at least I don't think so. And then you would kind of eyeball it down. Helps that this one has its aligned pattern so I can kind of see. And because the glue dries relatively quickly, we don't have to wait too long. And really just push that in. And then once you're all done, you would do this side as well. And then just kind of fold it over. And it makes it have that finished edge, like sort of like a composition notebook. And because you already have, if you're using a paper pad, all coordinating papers, it can come out looking really sweet. Now this one actually looked really cute before the binding because this was centered, but with the binding it kind of covered up that green, which is okay. But just be aware for your designs, like this one looks really cute, but I don't know if I'd want to cover this up. So that's how you make your booklets. And if I'm going too fast, let me know in the comments below, because then I can just do a video just of the booklets and then maybe just of the cover. But I do think once you start putting these together, they do go by rather quickly. But what we're going to finish off with is we're going to make our cover. And so this measures 11 inches by 6 inches. And it's there, but you can't really see it. It's 6 inches high by 11 inches wide. So it's a little taller, but we do that so that the books have a little bit of overhang. And then what you're going to want to do is, once you've cut it down to 6 by 11, then you're going to want to score at 4.5. And then you're going to want to score at 5. You're going to want to score at 9. And then you're going to want to score at 10. And what I would recommend, because this is basically going to hold your booklet together, this should be as thick of a paper as you can get. Now I'm just using the white cardstock that I had, but if you have heavier cardstock scrapbook paper, then you may want to use that. Now we will give it a little bit of stability when we add the matte sheets, but it doesn't give it a ton of stability. So I would not recommend making this cover if all you have is just copy paper weight, unless you're going to laminate it, and then that's fine. But if you're doing just strictly paper on paper, then you're going to want this as thick of a paper as you can get it. Now I do have a scoreboard, and so I can just score it down here. Easy peasy, makes it really quick. But if you don't, and again you're doing this in where there's multiple people and not everyone has, or not anyone has, then the way that I would recommend you do this is you measure out your 4.5 and you make some guide dots as if you're going to make a line. Now if you do make a line, do it in pencil so that you can erase it. And then very carefully I would have a ruler and use that to guide the paper, at least to make a fold. And then you can line it up so that you know that your fold is really good and strong, and then you can burnish that in. Again, using whatever tools that you have. And then I would do the same thing, measure out the 5 inches, make your marks, do your line if you need to, and then kind of butt up that one as well. Now, because the paper is rather thick, it will take a little bit of coaxing, but if you have the flat edge, then that gives you just a better opportunity to be able to get a better crease. And then again, just burnish that down. And then you would do the same there. And I actually scored mine already, so that just makes it easy. But that's a way that you can get around that and just using some very simple tools. Okay. Now, in order to cover this, like I did with this one, then you're going to need 4 sheets of 5 3/4 tall by 4 2/4 wide, or not 4 2/4, 4 1/4, 4.25. And then you're going to need one piece that is 5.75, so 5 3/4, and then one that is 3/4, and that's basically for that little flap there. Now, because this is going to probably have a lot of pressure on it, I don't recommend covering it. I mean, because it's really thin, because this is only 1/2 inch. So in order to not get in the crevices, you'd have to make something that's less than 1/2 inch, and that probably is really fiddly. So what I'd recommend is getting a washi tape that kind of fits in there. And it's okay if it goes over. It'd be better if it didn't. But again, you're just trying to use materials you have on hand. If you didn't have that, you could use tape. It won't make it decorative, but we're really just trying to give it some stability, okay? And so you would make your cover pages and you would glue them down, and the dimensions that I've given you, and it will be in the blog, if you can see, is nicely matted. And then you've got that little bit of a finished edge there. It looks a little weird because it cut off the word and the reindeer, but I think it still looks cute. I don't have anything there, and this is the washi tape. And again, you would just glue that down, and then here you could use either your washi or you could use your Scotch tape. You could do the gluing with the little piece of paper that's a little bit smaller, but again, that would be a really small piece of paper. And you want to take your time on this, but on the one that I did, I actually wrapped this around several times, just because this will have probably the most wear and tear. And so you would do the same and cut it. And you can do it more than that. There's no need for me to do it because I'm not going to be using this. And the reason why it would be better if you had one that's a little less than 1/2 inch is because you'll have a little bit of an overhang, which is not bad if it actually sticks, but it could start lifting. So just, it's something to be aware of depending on the application that you're doing this for. Okay, and then to get the hole, I just used a single hole punch. Now I do have a crocodile, which is this right here. And so if I were going to make this for my shop, I would make the booklets exactly the same way, although I would probably choose this method versus the other, just because I can make several of these and it's still thin and gives the person who's purchasing it the option to add their own pictures and journaling cards and whatnot. I would also opt to use my crocodile and make a punch through, and it isn't so much because it makes a smaller hole than a single hole punch, but it's because I have a bunch of these little brad things, and then I could make this a little bit more secure than just having a hole. And that's the beauty of this. And when I make my traveler's notebook for my shop, anytime I'm doing something that has the strings, this is what I do. But again, depending if you are at a church function or at a family function, it's easier to get this at Target or Walmart or the Dollar Tree for like $1 or $2 than it is to get this, especially if this is just a one-off project. Then otherwise, just use your hole punch. You don't want it to be too close to the edge because that could rip, so you want to go a little farther down. I don't measure, I just punch. And then for the Velcro that I have is actually kind of wide. So what I did was I took one Velcro dot and I cut it in half. And so this will probably be one of the last things that you do, because you want everything decorated. You would cut it in half while it's still on the plastic it comes on, because you don't want it quite sticky yet. And then once you've decorated your cover, you would put this down. And I wouldn't put it too far down, but I wouldn't put it too far up. Again, I'm not measuring. And then I would put to the other half here. And then that way you can get a lot of these covers with very little of these Velcro dots. And the reason why I have them together is once everything is assembled and I've got my booklets in here, so let me use that as a demonstration, then I'll know how far, because I don't want to go as tight as I can, because then that does not leave any room for expansion. But I do want to go so that it's secure, but it still gives a little bit of room if you do add stuff to these. And then once I had that down, then I would just peel that other piece off. A reasonable expectation. And then again, I wouldn't go all the way down. This is just more awkward because I'm on camera. And then push it down. Now it's okay if it doesn't perfectly line up right now, because the beauty of Velcro is you can make it line up, because right now you can still pull it tight, no problem. But as your little journal grows, it just needs to catch a little and it can still close rather easy. And then the way that the books stay in is if you're using elastic, then you would just go double the size of your book. That's how I do it. And you'd cut that off. And you'd feed it through the top. And you'd feed it through the bottom. And you want this to be pretty taut, but not so much that you bend your paper. So there is that fine line, because there will be some strain on this once you add your booklets. And then this will hold this. And the way that I attach more than one on here, because it really only gives you enough room for one string, is you either make another elastic or you can use a rubber band. And then you open it up in the middle, and then you insert that there so that your booklets don't fall out. And then you can still close and you've got your little booklet. However, you don't have a bunch of elastic, and I'll insert a picture of my bin of elastic. I make traveler's notebooks, and so I need lots of elastic and lots of different colors just because I want it to coordinate. You don't have that. Again, we're trying to figure out the best way to make one of these for your situation. it does work if you just have rubber bands. And these thinner ones, I would imagine, work better than the thicker ones. And so you just sort of want to do that figure of 8 where they kind of see, now I don't know how I did it. So you pull this one and then you pull this one. Yeah. I don't know if I showed you anything, but basically you just want one long elastic, right? And then you'd actually do exactly the same, where you would insert it through the hole coming out. And because this one has, oh no, it goes through. Because I put the grommet there, I thought maybe it wouldn't go through. And then you would put it here. And I do it this way rather than the reverse way because I'd rather have that tie where I'm tying it together on the inside and then the outside. To me, it just aesthetically, it makes more sense. And then I would just tie my rubber bands together. Now, the problem that I can see the rubber bands posing is that these might break. But again, depending on what your use for this is, if you're crafting with kids or if you're crafting in a group, this might be the most economical. And if you can find some rubber bands that kind of match what you're doing, even better. But this way, it still works because really we just want something to slide under. And then you would use the rubber band method. And depending on how many books you have, you can rubber band this book. And then this one will slide in. And then you could rubber band another book. It's actually easier to rubber band the book that's attached. And then slide this one in. And that's how you can keep building if you only have the one elastic. Now this is rather chunky, but we can still close it. And you've made yourself a little traveler's notebook, daily, December daily. Or you've made yourself a little traveler's notebook, just journal, like you've just literally made yourself a little traveler's notebook because you've made little notebooks and you've made a cover that can, you know, go on the go with you. The sturdier this is, the less wear and tear it's going to be. But I think this would look super cute if you put it in like a clear bag and then you had a topper. And again, depending on what you're making it for, you could get these undone rather quickly. Now, because of the size, I don't know that there's any ready-made notebooks, but again, I like using the materials I have. It does cut into a lot of paper, so if you're trying to use your paper stash, this would be a great project for that. I'm exhausted. All right, guys, so I hope this tutorial was useful to you. Let me know in the comments below whether you're going to make one of these or what you'd make it for. Again, my thought behind this was for the December Daily, but really you're just making a traveler's notebook. How you decorate it really will determine what the theme of it is, because honestly, if you just cut down to size some filler paper, you could make literally lots of little notebooks that you can take with you. And if you are in the planner world and you have children who want to do planning, you might want to make one of these for them so that they get to play with some stickers and they get to do some planning, but you may not need to come out of pocket for the planner system, whether it be a Happy Planner or Erin Condren or, you know, something from Walmart. This might be a way to introduce them to the concept of it without having to sink in a lot of money. All right, guys, that's it for me for now. And as always, aloha.